Welcome to Business with Beers, a podcast for business owners who want to scale their business to massively grow their income and contribution by investing in people, process, and technology. I am your host, Brian Beers. This week, we've got an awesome show with Michael Nelson. Michael is an entrepreneur in the tech space and author of Goals That Matter, the Deceptively Simple System to Achieve Every Dream. This episode is packed with great tips, strategies, and stories on how to set goals, how to track them, and how to stay accountable for achieving them. Michael talks about how most business owners tend to focus too much on the business and fail to create balance between other parts of life that matter more. He shares some great tips on how to create that balance. Michael also walks me through an example of taking my big goal to grow this podcast and chunks it down into actionable steps. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with your friends, rate and review with your favorite part to help us reach more people. And if you'd like to learn more about the topics covered in this podcast, check out brianbeers.com to sign up for my free weekly newsletter delivering content directly to your inbox. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian. Excited to be here.
Great. Well, this wouldn't be Business with Beers if I didn't ask you that me and you are at a bar somewhere in Sacramento. What would we be drinking?
So mine's going to be a ginger beer, but there's a lot of craft breweries here. There's a lot. It's real popular here.
A ginger beer, huh? It's like a ginger ale, but beer, or is it?
No, it's non-alcoholic. I was really good at it for quite a few years. So I actually gave up drinking about 18 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. Yeah. Fantastic. So if you could share your story, who you are, kind of what you do, your backstory, and then we'll take it from there.
So born in Sacramento, traveled around a lot, lived abroad a couple of times, and started, my first life was a school teacher. Once I graduated college, threw everything in a backpack, moved to Hawaii, ended up starting to teach over there, came home, started teaching, did that for about 3 years. And then I got one of the first computer labs in the school district. Did that for about a year and a half, and the internet came out, built a website for our school. And a friend of my dad's, who was one of the cheapest businessmen I've ever met, asked me to build a website for his company. Did that. He asked me how much. I said, I don't know, this much. And he's like, that's not enough. I'm going to give you more. I thought I might be onto something here. So I actually started a web design firm back in 1995. I was still teaching full time while doing that, did that part time with the intention I'd roll it into a full-time gig within about 2 years. It exploded and I had to drop down to half-time within about 3 months. And about 4 months after that, I was down to, I had to quit outright. So ran that was tiger by the tail. That just exploded the whole internet. I mean, everybody wanted a website back then. It was actually funny. One of the first ones we built was for a real estate agent. And we actually got the front page of the local business newspaper that there were house listings and there were actual pictures on the website that you could visit of these houses that were for sale. So it was really early on in the equation.
That's cool.
Yeah, did that, built that up. That went from 7 to 32 people in a couple of years, just exploded. Tried to do everything through cash flow, made a lot of mistakes. But basically when the .com hit, or the .bomb hit in 2001, ended up losing that and took everything down with it. So I got to restart my life, my business, everything at about 39 years of age. That kind of has set the stage for what came in the second half of my life.
Okay.
I started a technical support firm. That's about 17 years ago that I started that. And when I started it, I really decided I wanted to do this business different. I wanted to have more balance in my life. Financially and business wise, there were a lot of things that I was going to do differently as well that I learned from the first business, but I didn't want to give my entire life up and throw everything into that business. So started it, of course, as all young businesses are that we are, you end up grinding. And I looked up about 7 years later and was mainly focused on the business. And that's when I really started changing things with setting goals in my life, being much, much more intentional about paying attention to those goals on a regular basis, having accountability around it. So that's ultimately what ended up for me starting this what I call the goal achieving system that I developed and have helped people follow. Okay. So now business is 17 years old now. We've got about 20 employees. It's what's known as a managed service provider. We do outsourced IT for small and medium-sized businesses. We also help companies do their digital transformation. A lot of businesses are now wanting to be purely cloud-based. So we help them do that as well. We help them do their digital transformation.
Okay. So you outsource IT support. So, if companies have computers all over the place, instead of an IT guy, you're the IT guy.
Yeah.
You help troubleshoot printers and I guess internet issues or anything related to the networks.
Yeah. They take care of their business. We take care of their technology.
Okay. And then what was the other part? It was going digital. Is that more like digital, like we have an office with a lot of paperwork? Is it systems to help digitalize that, or?
No, it's more the digital transformation. So about 4, 5, 6 years ago, almost everybody had a server. You had to have a server on site. You're oftentimes about 7, 8 years ago, people had email servers on site. Now with cloud computing, with Microsoft 365, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, you no longer have to have servers. You can do everything cloud-based. And so we're helping our clients now start moving into what we call a serverless environment.
Okay.
Where they can work from anywhere, any place, anytime, and do so securely.
Great. That's awesome. And then you are also the author of Goals That Matter, a book I think you recently wrote. Can you tell us kind of about that? What's the book about? Maybe the backstory. Why did you write it?
So it's the Deceptively Simple System to achieve every dream. How the genesis of this really came out of the failure of the first business. At the time, I didn't know it would lead to this, but as I write in the book, in 2013, so the business was about 9 years old at that point, I went on a longer vacation down to Puerto Rico. And when I was kind of on the beach, I was examining my life and what was working and what wasn't. And what I found was I was really kind of out of balance. I was focusing so much time on the business. But my friendships had started to wane. My health had started to wane. Things just weren't in balance how I wanted. So I really took some time on that trip to just list down the 6 main areas of life and what I wanted to have in that. And so that was basically the genesis of how this started. And through that, in each of those 6 areas, I came up with goals that I wanted to achieve. One of the things I did differently this time, though, is that I made a commitment that I would review them regularly. So I started looking at them once a month, once a quarter, not as often, not like I do now, but that was the basis of this Goals That Matter system that I developed. So it's a way of looking, you identify what matters. And that's really what I did when I was down in Puerto Rico. Once I did that, I had to figure out how to achieve it. And part of that is 2 of the most critical things with any goal achieving system is regular review and accountability. So I made that commitment to do a regular review. Did that for quite some time. And again, I was doing that at least monthly. Sometimes I'd look at it a little more often. And I started seeing more success, which was really awesome. In 2016, I read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Mm-hmm. So I got into a daily practice. And what I did is I added to that, to his 6 steps, I would review my goal sheet every day. And that's when my life changed. That's when absolutely everything changed, is that I had a practice where I could regularly look at what matters, what my goals were, chunk them down, and start having accountability every single week on them.
Okay. So a lot to unpack there. So what are the 6, you mentioned 6 areas. What are the 6 areas?
6 main areas. So they break down family, friends, and relationships, spirituality, service contribution, physical, nutritional health, personal learning, intellectual, adventure, lifestyle, and then career, business, financial. And I actually chose purposefully to make that last, because I've trained a lot of entrepreneurs in the system, and we're all really, really good at coming up with the goals for our business. Yeah. We're really bad at making sure that the other parts of our lives are good.
So it's family and friends, spiritual contribution, physical, education, adventure, and business. I needed more. But, okay. So for somebody who is maybe all focused on business, right, and all these other things, they don't even maybe realize, right, what's kind of the first step you give people to create a more balanced, goal, what they're looking to achieve, and then obviously if they start to achieve that puts their life in balance.
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is we have them go through an exercise called What Matters. There's the What Matters sheet, but we ask them 50 questions, and this goes up and down, but basically it's just to get them thinking. So we have questions in each of those 6 main areas to get people thinking about what matters for them. And it kind of depends upon where they are in their life, where they are in their business, familial relationships. So there's questions that they can go through, and it's really just to get them thinking. And then they fill out what matters, and it's just a free for all. It can be a dream, it can be a goal, it can be a wish, whatever they want, but just kind of free flowing. What matters in your life? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? And start filling that out on the What Matters sheet. And that kind of becomes the basis of what they decide to move forward.
Okay.
Not everything that not everything that you come up with. For me, I've always wanted to play the piano. I don't have the time to do it. So that's not yet a goal, because the difference between a goal and a dream is dreams aren't smart. A goal has to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-based.
Yep.
So
goals, yep.
But I'm not willing to put a time frame on it yet. So I can't make that a SMART goal. So that's still a dream. So there's an area in the system to be able to hold on to your dreams. You look at them on a regular basis. Ultimately, this What Matters sheet gets distilled into a life by design. And that's kind of the basis. You build your life by design. You look at that every quarter, and that's where you hold your dreams. That's where you hold your longer term vision of your life.
Okay. So one of my questions is, and maybe you could speak to how you do it or how you advise people that work. Some people, they dream big, right? It's the 10X. I'm going to have this huge goal, and and having that goal is going to make me think differently and act differently in order to get to achieve it. And then other people think, if it's just 1% better, 10% better, it's like within reach, and then they can do it. But they're not really significantly changing any habits because it's only incrementally better. Do you have a philosophy on which way you advise, how you do it yourself?
I've actually seen people do it both ways. The 10X goal is great. I have some really big goals for the TLC Tech, the primary tech support business. I have some big goals for the Goals That Matter system. The key, though, is chunking them down. So 10X is great, but how are you going to get there? Okay, so you want to be 10X in X number of years. That's great. So you put that on, and ultimately this drills down to we have a one-page accountability sheet. On there are your 10-year, 3-year, 1-year, quarterly, monthly, and weekly goals. So it's great. You want to be 10X in 8 years. That's great. But that's got to be chunked down as well. What steps are you going to take this week, this month, to move you towards that 10X goal? Because It's also really easy to have that 10X, which can be motivating, but it's really easy to get lost in the day-to-day of not moving towards that goal if it's not regularly in front of you with steps to keep moving you towards it.
Yep. And the other thing that happens too, which is sometimes hard to see, is it's not linear, right? A lot of times our progress is exponential. And if you have this big goal, sometimes you think, I can't, achieve half of it in whatever half the time, but reality, they make some steps, and then it really gets a lot faster in your progress of it. If you're you have good habits, like you said, and you're accountable and you're taking the right steps, you pour gasoline on it.
And if you're new to it, if you want to set a big goal, but you don't have the experience, you've got to build that goal achieving muscle. And that's one of the things that I think is the beauty of this regular review is that you're taking steps every day, every week, every month, moving you towards your larger goal. So you're building up that goal achieving muscle. Okay. And I think that's really critical to success.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do an example, if you don't mind. We could do a fictitious one or one of yours. Which way do you want to go, or one of mine? I don't.
Yeah. Throw me one of yours.
All right. So I don't know. So my podcast here, I just started out a couple months ago. I want to get it to, a top 5%, let's say, of all podcasts. I don't even know how many downloads that needs, but through these websites, you can see where you rank. So a significant downloadership within the next 3 years.
Okay, so top 5, 3 years. First thing is I'd come up with a short weekly goal, go discover what that number is so that now we have that viable number. Okay. So 3 years from
200,000 downloads a week. I don't know. I'm just making these numbers.
Okay. So 200K a week. Great. So now you got to break down what are the pieces to get you there. So you've got marketing that you're going to do there. You're going on, I've heard you on other podcasts, so you're reaching out that way. Same thing for me with the book is I'm getting out there more on podcasts for the marketing because I think that's a great way to get the word out. So I've got a goal of I'm going to do one podcast a week for the rest of this year into next year as well, as part of the marketing for this. Same thing for you. What are the ways that you can get out in front of people? So how many podcasts do you need to go on to be able to get more people moving over to your podcast?
You're right. And it's probably one a week or one, as many as probably necessary, right? Until you start gaining momentum and hitting. I don't know what that number is. But for me, it is something I know that I need to work on, right? Is getting, into other circles, right? And then those circles hear you, and then, you have a lot of similar listenership. So, all right. So that's one way, right?
Great thing I've heard is using other people's stages.
Okay.
Because they have a platform, they have a stage. Same way, I'm coming on your podcast. I'm getting on your stage to get out in front of your people as well. So number of podcasts. Okay. How many? You don't get invited to every podcast you ask to be on. So how many asks a week do you need to do to get on one podcast?
Gotcha. Yep. So it's a close. It's like whatever your close rate is, right? And obviously, the less known you are, the lower my close rate is, which I see because I have a virtual assistant who does this for me, and we get a lot of non-responses, right? But then you start to pick them up, right? You gain momentum. It's part of the goal setting, that curve we were talking about.
Exactly. So, we're halfway through the year. So your goal might be, I want to be on 26 podcasts before the end of the year. To do that, that means I need to send out 3 asks a week. Okay. So that's one avenue. What about social marketing?
So those are called, and you know this, but for other people, there's like lead and lag measures.
Yep.
Right. The lead is the what actions do you have to take in order to get the result? The result's the lag, right? So the lag is how many downloads do I have? The lead is how many podcasts do I get on? But even the better lead is how many, knowing a close rate of, let's say 50% or whatever it is, right? It's how many do I need to ask for to get the how many that I'm on, which will ultimately affect the listenership at the end.
And same thing when you talk about that 10x, that you want to be 10x 3 years from now, or you want to get to 200K. That's a great goal, and it's easy to be working towards that. We feel like we're working towards that, but are we taking the actual steps? And taking this back into my primary business, we've got a full-time business development person. We've ran his numbers over the last year, and we know what his close rate is, how many discoveries he needs to do, how many calls he needs to do, how many meetings. So if you don't have that leading indicator to say, I have made X number of calls this week, you're not going to achieve that lag of 200,000 downloads. Yep. And that's why it's so critically important that we take our goals and we break them down into chunks, be that quarterly, monthly, and ultimately weekly.
Yeah. So that chunking, let's talk about that. So would you take like that, say if I say 200,000 within 3 years, and then would you break that into an annual goal and then a quarter and then a week? Or is that too many increments like to conceptualize?
Yeah. So my system comes down to a 1-page sheet called the accountability sheet. And on there, you have your affirmations, you have 10-year, 3-year, 1-year, quarterly, monthly, and weekly goals. Now, one of my goals is to read 52 books a year. I don't have an annual of 52, a quarterly of 13, a monthly of, I have 50. And early on though, as I was building that regularity, I might read 4 books under my monthly and have the 52 books on the annual as well. But I think it's really, really key to have a 1-page sheet that you're looking at on a regular basis. So in my system, it's really important to keep things down to 1 page. What I do on the longer, the 3-year and the 10-year are the ones that really bring me juice. So for somebody that's got that 10x that they really want to achieve, keep that on your long term, keep that on the 1-page sheet on the accountability, because that's giving you juice. The other thing that comes with that is knowing your why. 10x is great, but why? Why do you want to achieve that? What's the why in your life? For me, it's passion, adventure, and sharing. I want to be passionate about what I do. I want to be able to share with my friends and family, and I want to have adventure. So having that big juice goal is what helps fuel you through the weekly and the monthly. And on those days when you're just not, the energy battery, as I call it, when it's not full, having that why and being able to see that big, audacious goal every day helps fuel us and helps give us more energy.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know if you've read Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold, but a lot of that's the same, right? You have this 3-year big, very descriptive of what your life looks like in the present, right? And then it's a question of, that hopefully is inspiring. And then all these actions you're taking today are then building towards achieving that vision that is very exciting to you. And if it's not exciting, if you're reading and you're not excited, it's not a good vision, right?
Exactly.
You got to rewrite it and think about it.
It's one of the exercises in the book as well, is to write out your 5 to 10 year vision. And you just write out a 1 to 2 page, what your life looks like and everything about it. I had actually done this exercise shortly after the Puerto Rico trip, before I formally developed my Goals That Matter system. And it was a 5-year vision. I hadn't looked at it for 2 years. I looked up and it was just shocking how many of those things had already came to pass. Now, I have a better practice now of reviewing it much more regularly.
Look at them.
But it's just so amazing how laying down that vision and then committing it to paper, what that does, and the pathways that builds in our brains, you start seeing things that start moving you towards being able to achieve those.
Yeah, we see that. I've experienced that myself too. When we're setting some big goals for our business, and once it's like the world's like your ocean, right? And you go in and it'll give you as much as you want. And if you go in with a teaspoon, it gives you a teaspoon. If you go in with a 5-gallon bucket, that's what you get, right? There's an abundance of success out there, but sometimes you don't even see things or know to ask things because you don't have the goal and you're not, you don't have the vision to see it, right? But once you see it, it's out there. The world's out there, the ocean's out there of opportunity. And so you got to know what that is. Yeah, I'm big on that. And that's been one of my developments over the last couple of years that I've seen, and we've had success with it as well. So
I refer to that. It's called the RAS, the Reticular Activating System. And the example, the easy example is you go looking at a new car. Once you've looked at it, you've test drove it, now you start seeing them everywhere. People that want to start running, and I make this reference in the book, is you decide that you're going to do it. You start doing the little things. But now, because this is on your daily goals and you're seeing it every day, you start seeing things for Run Club. You start talking to people. It's like, hey, I have a friend that does this. They might be interested. And then all of these little things just keep opening up that help you move towards achieving your goal. And you're right. It's amazing how the universe conspires to make that happen.
Yep.
And great example, your teaspoon versus the 5-gallon. I love that.
Yeah. I heard that from somebody else, of course. It's a good visual. So talk to me about what happens when they change then, right? So you have a priority set, but then life happens, things change. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to change your goals? Do you get do they get like massaged and kind of into a different direction? Or, I think some people feel that, once they write it down, they're committed, but then if they're not passionate about it, what
Absolutely.
do they do?
So this is where an accountability partner really becomes critically important, because it's really easy to believe our own PR. So, and again, so there's that, but then also go back to your why. So my why is passion, adventure, and sharing. Part of that passion is being passionate about health. So I took up running. I know people that have said, okay, I'm going to run a marathon. They start running, they run a half marathon and find out they absolutely hate it. Let's go back to your why. The why is to be in better health so that I can have better time with my kids, so that I can be more adventurous, so I can do these things. With an accountability partner, examine what was the why. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm a long distance runner. That's my passion. But let's say I hated running. What could I do instead? Okay, I could cycle. I could take up other sports. So I don't have a problem with people migrating or modifying their goals because it's not meeting their needs. But that's hugely different than giving up on a goal because I'm not going to put the time in to commit to it.
Yep.
And again, having that accountability partner, it's really important so that we don't believe our own PR. In our heads, we can tell ourselves lots of stories and make it easy as to why, yeah, it's fine to give that up. Now, personal example, I run an ultra marathon every year. Typically, I do it with one of my best buddies. We do a destination race. I was diagnosed with cancer at the end of last year. That threw all of my goals completely out of whack. And so that's a really critical thing, is that life is going to happen and it's going to throw curves at us. In writing the book, I had a set writing pattern and there was a publication date. My primary business went through a challenging time about 2 years ago, and then it hit this major growth spurt. I needed to focus my business, a majority of my time on my primary business. So talked with my accountability partner, explained here, and then modified the goals. I think if we get too rigid then the goals aren't joyful. And if they don't bring you joy, like you said, they're not worth having.
Yep. And it changes too, even with, cancer, and sorry to hear that, but that becomes your primary focus, right? Is solving that and becoming better.
Absolutely.
Right. Nothing else. A lot of the other stuff doesn't matter at that point if you don't have your health. So, it's okay to shift and refocus, right? Then you can still, move on from there.
Absolutely. And and the good news is I went through treatment and everything's clear now. So I got a clean bill of health. It's been an interesting past 6 months, to say the least. Oh, that's fantastic. But it gave me a really awesome opportunity. And I talk about it, when the wheels come off the bus. That bus the wheels really came off in December. So it gave me another, I've had minor where I had to dodge or weave, but this one was pretty this was a big deal. And it gave me a real opportunity to go back and re-examine what really matters, what's important. And so I still kept a lot of my goals. I had to modify some dates, the daily, the weekly, the monthly, and the quarterly goals. Those changed. So, it was all about health and survival and eating healthy. So it's also a great way when life does change to be able to have a vehicle to get those goals refocused and to have some accountability around it.
Okay, great. So I want to talk about process for a second, right? We all have the same 168 hours in a week. What are some ways that you leverage your time or multiply your time in order to get more done?
So one of the first things I did, and this has been huge and I recommend everybody do it, is on your phone, turn off every single notification. The only notifications I get are voicemails and texts. Okay. I have no idea how many emails that are unread. I have no idea Facebook updates. I don't allow anything to put a number on the app on my phone.
The badge. Yeah.
The badge. Thank you. I don't have any things that pops up and tells me. It doesn't make any noise. It doesn't vibrate when it texts. One of the things is that we are so, on your computers, and I recommend this to our clients as well. An email comes in and it pops up, you got this email. We're so distracted all the time by these digital interruptions. And I think that's a huge, huge way that you can gain back a lot of time in your day.
Okay, that's a good one.
For me, that was a great life hack for me. I did that about 4 years ago. I'm actually now, with the book and everything, I'm spending more time on Facebook, but I just read a great book called Time Off that suggests deleting them off your phone. If you want to go on Facebook, you have to sit down at the computer because it's really easy just with a little bit of time to just go and distract ourselves or to just pick that up. You're in line at a store. That's one. The other is habit stacking. And I talk about this a lot in the book. Getting into regular habits. I wanted back when, as I was developing this 2014, 15, 16, I was looking at my goals semi-regularly, but it's when I built that daily practice of doing the miracle morning and incorporated this. So I habit stacked it on top of that. That just made it work so much better. So doing these little life hacks that reduce the amount of energy you have to expend to do that. If you want to start going to the gym on a regular basis, make it easy. Gym clothes across the bed, the alarm across the room, so that you have to get out of bed to turn off the alarm and your gym clothes are already laid out. It takes no mental energy to do that next step. And the more that we can create these little habits that don't require any energy whatsoever, allows us to have more, because you wake up and you've got an energy battery that's full. By the end of the day, it's likely going to be depleted. And every little thing you have to think about and make a decision on is going to take away some of that energy. So one of the ways I create more energy is by trying to automate as many of those processes as I can.
Okay. What are some of the things you've been able to automate over the last number of years between your business or your life?
So one of the things I did is I changed my morning routine. That started with the Miracle Morning, but I don't look at email until I sit down and have had other things done in my day. One of the things that we have a really bad habit of, a lot of us, is looking at our phones, looking at the email, looking at text. If I'm looking at my email when I get up in the morning, I am allowing anybody in the world with my email address to set the priorities of my day.
True. Yep.
That stops. So I control when I get an email. The other thing I do, just another little hack, is I'll actually go offline an email. So I'll open up Outlook, but I go offline so it's not sending and receiving. That way I control when I choose to go back online and let new mail come in. So it gives me the ability to do deep work. That's one of the hacks that I've done. On the dailies, it's, my morning routine. That's probably the thing that gave me the most time back in my life, because it's exercise, it's spirituality, it's reading, it's journaling. It's the time that I get to focus and create how my day is going to start.
Okay, great. So one of my other questions here is about the culture and people, right? So attracting and retaining employees is probably one of the most important things a company can do to grow. I mean, especially these days. So I don't know if you could describe kind of what at your company, at the IT company, or goals that matter. What does the culture look like, and any tips that you've kind of learned over the years of how to attract and retain quality employees?
So amazingly, my first employee was hired in 2006, and he just actually celebrated 15 years with us. So that's been an awesome success story. We use a system called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is a really great system. Identifies your culture, your values, and it gives you a way to be able to get those values out to your staff. Talk about them on a regular basis, implement them into your business, hire, fire, and promote people based upon your core values as well. The other side, so in the EOS system, you've got a visionary and an implementer. I'm a really good visionary, not a good implementer. That's not my strong suit. And that was probably the biggest shift in our culture, is when I brought on an operations manager that truly became the implementer. Building processes, building accountability. Not to sound trite, but employees are often, when we were kids, we had our rules, right? The parents had the rules, and we kind of bucked against those rules. And now I don't want all these, but ultimately kids really do need and want rules to have a good life. Yeah, exactly. Same thing is true for staff. They need to understand what the rules are, what the structure is, how they get to advance, what's expected, and also knowing that the business is going to run consistently. One of the things that this operations manager did is he brought that level of process to our business. And prior to that, we had more turnover. Since he came on, we've had almost no turnover. It's been utterly amazing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so that's great advice. Figure out if you're the implementer or the visionary. And if you're the visionary, make sure you have an implementer. You just gotta, follow systems and processes and hold everybody accountable, like you said. The visionary, which is me as well. We think sometimes we're abstract and chase shiny objects and ideas sometimes, and
squirrel.
And so for the people that want that system and structure, sometimes it's harder for us to provide that on a consistent basis. So,
and when you have that implementer, let them go. Let them run that portion of the business. There's a great term that I got from another group called seaguling. And it talks about, the owner goes away to an event, they learn, they get really excited, they come back and they seagull over, they fly over, and then they just crap out all of the stuff. And, okay, I want to implement this and this and this. And the staff is just going, oh my gosh. I was rather known for that, to the point that they finally, one day I came back from a thing and they queued up a seagull sound. And actually it's, okay.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So you let your implementer be kind of that gateway. You don't go back and talk to your entire staff. You talk to your implementer to be that sounding board. You want them to not shut you down. You want to be excited. But for me, I need him to balance that crazy that sometimes as an owner, we can come back with all these ideas. It's like, these are great, but let's pick one and let's talk to the staff about that.
Great. Cool. That's great advice. Thank you. Do you have anybody who's been, a mentor or coach in your life that you kind of credit, and maybe what they taught you?
I've actually had I've had a business coach that I had for probably 10 years. I did that very early. I've used coaches for business, for training, for running. But Gary Yates was my first business coach, and he got my crazy. He understood the crazy. As entrepreneurs, we have this, you got to be a little off to be an entrepreneur, because there's, it takes so much energy and drive and fighting against adversity and just giving it your all. And he gave me permission to be that visionary, but to balance it. But he always encouraged that side, to make sure that side got to dream and come up with the big visions, come up with these big goals. Then talk to somebody temperate. Don't go back and talk to the entire staff, make people crazy.
Yep. So he gave you permission to dream. He was a sounding board kind of to help you work through some of these ideas with another person who probably similar visionary, I would imagine. As a coach, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe help you tone these down into a way that's probably a little bit more possibly presentable, knowing maybe your implementer's personality, correct?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I also work with a business coach, and I do some coaching myself with some clients. From your point of view, what are some of the benefits of why someone would want to work with a coach, like you said, besides what you just mentioned?
For me, the biggest is accountability. And the same thing through Goals That Matter. I'm doing accountability coaching with some people. That's probably one of the biggest is.
And what does that look like? The accountability, like, a lot of times, accountability means you do what you say you're going to do, right? So as your coach, how do you then hold your clients accountable in a way that, they would accept?
So with the GTM system, it's easy because there's a one-page accountability sheet. I get that from them on a weekly basis. So it's really easy to see what matters to them, how they've designed their life, and then what they're committing to move forward in their life vis-a-vis their goals. So that makes it really easy. It's having that accountability, though, knowing that you're going to have to be able to explain to somebody the choices you made. Great example, my accountability partner, he started off as my personal trainer years ago, but we'd become extremely good friends. Food was one of the things I really wanted some accountability about. For 3 years, we have texted each other everything we've eaten.
Okay.
You want to talk about a level of accountability. So I have a weekly goal about how I want to eat. But if I'm going to break out of that, I'm going to be accountable almost immediately. Now, we all have days we're not crazy about this, but I had a couple of cookies yesterday. No big deal. Texted that over. But if that shows up a couple of 2-3 days in a row, it's going to be.
He's going to start giving you some.
How's this meeting you towards your goals? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He's going to start holding me accountable. And that's the biggest thing, because again, we go back to believing our own PR. well, if you had the day I had, you'd be doing this too. Not so much. So it's just that added little, before I'm going to put something on my mouth, I'm going to have to report this. Do I really want to tell my nutrition coach that this is what I ate? So I think that's one of the most critical. I think that's one of the biggest things about coaching. And back with my business coach, that's what he was my accountability coach with the business. So we'd meet, we'd talk about what was happening, I'd get the advice, but ultimately I would leave with a checklist of things that I was committing to get done by our next meeting.
Yep.
And then being held accountable. And I imagine you're doing the same thing with your coaching clients.
Yep. Same thing. That's one of the reasons you do it, right? You have someone you can confidant, you can trust, and you can work with, and someone who will listen and help you strategize through ideas. And maybe, a lot of it's just asking questions. So a lot of times people think they only have two choices, right? And it's like binary decision. And really, it's the goal of the coach is to say, hey, well, is there a third option? Is there a fourth option?
Right.
And then once you start asking those questions, right, you think, well, I could do this, I could do that. And then they have an array of choices to choose from. And, at the end of the day, it's still their decisions, and it's still their, however they want to move it. But at least we help open the minds to other possibilities.
And I love your line about turning years into days.
Yep.
With the coaching, and that's such a critical, I think that's just brilliant the way that you present that, because it really does. You can take, going back to that 10X, that can take years, but with a coach that's holding you accountable, you can shortcut that down so much faster.
Yep. Decades into days. And
decades into days. It's a great line.
Yep. And a lot of things you do, you read a book, right? You take, your years of experience, right? And you pack it into this book, and then someone could read it in a couple of days and learn all those things. And it's a matter of wanting to change, wanting the resources, and then going and taking action, right?
Taking that next step. It's kind of interesting watching the number of book sales versus the number of downloaded documents. Because one of the things in the book is go download these documents that you need to do the goals that matter. Is
it like linear, like a certain percentage of it?
I'm starting to notice a percentage. Yeah, it's very interesting. And we've all done that. We all read, leaders or readers. We should all be reading on a regular basis. Not everything is going to resonate with you. I read books where go download this, do this. I get some good ideas and I take those ideas, but I may not do the entirety of the system. But it's you hit the nail on the head of taking that next step, taking the actionable, the action that you need to move that forward. And that may be just a simple matter. I do a lot of reading. I have a journal that I keep next to where I read, that I just take little notes of ideas, because that's when you write something down, you're reaffirming it, you're deepening that. But then being able to go back and look at those ideas again. That's a really important thing, I think.
Yep. Because a lot of times you read something and maybe it doesn't totally register, and then later, right, you go back to it. Now it's it makes a lot more sense to you, and you really get it. So I see that a lot of time. So anyway, on one of those books, do you have any other books that you recommend that you're reading now that you think would be impactful for people?
So on the business for beers, I did one of the best books I ever read for my primary business was called Making Money is Killing Your Business. By Chuck Blakeman. Bizarre name. Somebody recommended it. I think it sat on my shelf for probably a year before I read it. And its basic idea is that our businesses go through 7 stages. Stage 1 where we're starting at Stage 4 is you're starting to build processes. You have your first level you might have your first manager. You're starting to hand some things off. Stage 5 is you're absolutely handing things off in a measured way and making plans to do that. Stage 6 is you've handed off everything that's needed in the day-to-day running of your business. You're still doing things, but you're doing what you want to do, not that you have to do. Stage 7 is you've been away from the business for 3 months. You come back in and one of the employees leans over and says, "Who's that?" And the person replies, "I think that's the owner."
Yeah.
So his whole thing is coming up with what he calls a BMD, business maturity date. And that's the date you take a 3-month sabbatical. So on April 12th, 2023 at 10:22 a.m., I start my 3-month sabbatical.
Okay.
And we came up with that date 6 years ago. Actually, it was the date was supposed to be 2022. COVID kind of threw a wrench in that. But we have been building towards that date. And what it does is it forces a business owner to look at everything they do, get it down on paper, and then start building the process to hand off what's needed. And your maturity date might be 3 years, it might be 5, it might be 10, whatever it is, but it helps you in an organized fashion. Same thing, taking that 10X, chunking it down. You're just taking, hey, here's the date that I want to be able to get out of the day-to-day of my business.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. That's one of my goals too. Ultimately, if you want to sell a business too, it's a lot more valuable when the owner is not involved in the day-to-day business.
Absolutely. That's actually the only thing that makes it really, truly valuable.
Yep.
And then we've been building my business, the tech support business towards that. I still got hats that I wear, but we're slowly taking those and giving those hats to other people.
Yep, that built to sell kind of model. Even if you never sell it, you still, if that's the mentality, that's how you then scale it too. Because one person, whether it's the owner or a person, can only do so much. So you set up those systems to process the people around it. You can multiply. So
and I have too much fun in this company. I have no intention of selling this. It's a great company. I love doing this one, and it's given me, and the beauty is now it's given me, when I look at my why, it actually gives me the ability to pursue my why. I get to have adventure, I get to be passionate, and I get to share more with more people now.
Yep. It's awesome. So where can listeners connect and learn more about you and your companies?
So the website is goalsthatmatter.com. You can find me on Facebook. And for the TLC Tech, we're tlctech.com. That's the technical support firm.
Great. Well, I appreciate you coming on today and sharing all
thrilled to
your
be here.
Advice. And I think this has been great, and you've delivered a ton of value to the listeners. So
thank you.
All
Appreciate
right, cool.
you having me.
All right. Thanks, Mike. I'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye.